your protection. So if anybody is on their own in the house and they send me those details, I would be obliged. It is, of course, your choice. That's it for the time being. I'm going to hand you over to Mike.
Right, hi everyone. My name is Mike Constable, District Membership Leader. Now, before I start my presentation, I would just make an observation, a general one, about COVID-19 virus, how it's changed our world, restricted us, particularly those like myself over 70. But at the same time, it's made us look at change, with Zoom meetings the most visible sign of this in Rotary. And I hope that is a kind of catalyst for change. Well, my presentation is about the reality of our aging membership situation, what we can do, and the need to get really serious about creating new clubs. This will be followed by questions, same with each speaker. After me will be Sue Roberts. She's from Wych, and she'll show you a video and be encouraging you to ask questions. It's a video of Wych Malbank Nantwich, which was a club formed about 19 months ago. Next we have Tony Coxill, my colleague, who will talk about perhaps a bit about Wych and also about networking. We also have David Buxton, who's a president in waiting. He follows with an insight into Northwich Weaver Valley, a club about to charter on Zoom, believe it or not. And then Tom Dickerson, the Northwich Sponsor Club champion, who helped to set this club up. Now, before I actually go through my content slide, I will pose a question for you all. The current total members of RGBI are 43,500. And RGBI just carried out a 10-year forecast for the total numbers they predict for 2030. So this is all based on current trends. What I want you to do is have a guess. There's no prize, unfortunately, just the satisfaction if someone gets it right. And in a few slides, I'll give you the answer. Okay, we'll move on to the contents. First of all, I'll show you very quickly a sort of 5-year historical trend for the district, current and projected numbers, membership profile. I'll outline what the challenge is. I'm sure most of you know it. Recruitment options. I've got 3 questions for all clubs. I will briefly talk about Cheshire East because there's 3 clubs, new clubs there, and the effect it has on the area. Sample tips, and in the end, suggestions and summary. Now, there's a lot of bad news at the beginning of this, I'll be honest, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. So please don't shoot the messenger at the beginning. We'll kick off with a unscheduled, perhaps a bit controversial slide that my colleague Steve used for PEPS training. So here we go. Now, this is the Harry and Bert slide. They've each had, say, 30 years of Rotary service. They've done great service in their time as Rotarians. There they are, sat in their seats every week, or walk beside anybody who sits in Harry and Bert's seats. We all know that's the way it still is in a lot of our very older Rotary clubs, even these days. But let's not escape the fact that these 2 chaps have actually put in a lot of great service in our clubs and achieved a heck of a lot for the community and elsewhere, and we should not forget that. But one thing these 2 chaps have not done, they've not secured the future of Rotary in their area. In 10 years' time, poor Harry and Bert probably not going to be with us. They'll be upstairs doing their higher service, as we call it. But what we need to do as Rotarians and clubs is to make sure that there is a Rotary for the next generation. And these chaps have sadly failed in that department. Just very quickly, I'll not go through the numbers. This is a 5-year historical trend. You can see in blue, it really means the clubs formed before about 2014. And you can see the trend is going down, but with the addition of new clubs, the slope is not as steep as it would have been. Now this pie chart is actually, it's showing the district with about, our district with about 1,848 people. And what it is a membership profile that's got different segments for each age group. Now take the first one, 29 and under, we've got 10 people. If I move on a little bit to the light blue, 60 to 69, getting to the big numbers, 324. 70 and over, 668. In the dark blue, 620. You're wondering, what's that? It's called unreported. It means people who, one reason or another, their date of birth is not on the system. But I say that within that 620 is probably 400 people who are 70 plus. So we're looking at 1,050, 1,060 people out of 1,800 that are. I make that point because some of those members won't be members of Rotary in 10 years' time. Here's the answer to the question. 43,500 drops to 30,000, they say, using current trends. That's a 31% drop. All I've done here in the pie chart is take our numbers of 1,848 and knock 31% off. That gives us 1,275. And then all I've done is move the segments 10 years to the right so that effectively you have nobody under 29. But that's conjecture, really. The big thing is that the average age will probably be over 80. But if we redouble our efforts and create 3 or 4 new clubs a year, I think we currently do 1 and 1.5, we could maintain something like the level at 2020. This is the challenge. The average age in our GBI, because they all have the same problem with unreported, is around about 74. Our district slightly less because we do slightly more new clubs. Average age 20 years ago was 60. That's a bit of a shock, isn't it? So in 20 years, we've aged 14. What has happened actually, it's not a problem about aging, it's a problem about not getting enough people in, aged 30 to 60, to keep that average down. What do we do? Reverse aging. Well, I'd love that personally, but the other thing is slow down aging. Well, that might happen for our grandkids, but probably not for us. I think we've plateaued on that front at the moment. Managing decline is probably the only real way ahead. Now, what we can do is do our best with retention. Don't just, be really careful why people are resigning and try and persuade them alternative things to do. Also recruitment. And we also need to leave a legacy for Rotary in our communities. I haven't put a question mark at the end of that. I'm assuming all of you agree with that. If you don't, let me know. Recruitment options. Well, the time-honoured way used to be to ask people in your network. And that was probably the best way over the last 115 years for Rotary. Well, the trouble is, because we've all aged, many of the 20th century clubs in particular, you've lost your network because a lot of them are retired. I'm retired. I haven't got the network I used to have. We have open days and showcases. I have to mention here that where they've been successful, what I've noticed is that Rotary itself is very good at doing events and projects. We are good at that. If we put the same effort into open days or showcases, you tend to have good results. Now, I'll talk now about best practice traditional clubs. I usually talk about Wallasey because, they've done very well in the past, and they are a traditional club, aging slowly, but managing decline to some extent. But I will instead talk about 2 clubs this year. I noticed that Chester have gone from 33 clubs to 44, 11 increase. And yes, there are 3 transferring from other clubs, but who's to know they weren't going to leave Rotary if they didn't do that. But they've actually gained 8 people from a big showcase exercise, and don't forget, Chester is an older club, their 100th anniversary coming up next year. But what they've actually got was 8 people, all aged in their 60s. Some who were just coming up to retirement and some that's just retired. Now, the other club I want to mention is Liverpool Exchange. They've increased by 7. And they're, I believe, I've never been to the club, I've talked to them, but they sound like a very vibrant club, be it traditional. But at the same time, they were about to start a satellite club based on the Tropical School of Medicine, I think that's it, yeah, in Liverpool. And but the lockdown stopped that. But point I'm making, they were actually making 2 inroads into, if you like, 2 audiences for recruitment. What I say is we must recruit new clubs for the next generations. Now, I spoke to a marketing guy a couple of years ago, and he said to me he thought the Rotary brand was very good. He said, your problem is young people won't join the older clubs. And we discussed this for a while and the reasons. And I began to realise that really there are 2 basic audiences that you're going for. Yes, there will be clubs in between that manage to get some younger people. So really, most retired or approaching retirement, these are the people that my club and many other clubs, probably the best we could hope for is to get people that age, or empty nesters, whatever. Future generations, really, we need to target this 30 to 60-year-old group who want to run their own clubs. And when I've talked to people, and I've talked to lots of people in 3 new clubs, I've asked them the question, and usually comes back the same. They said, well, we prefer clubs, people our own generation. Yes, we can learn from a sponsor club, whatever, but they say to me, but two factors, cost and time, are big to them. So when it comes to dining, actually, it's not so much the cost, it's more the time they complain about, because they want to get on with projects to do with communities, etc. And they also, what you've got to remember, these 36 to 60-year-olds, a lot of them are in the late 40s, early 50s, senior professionals running their own businesses. These guys want to run their own clubs. Now, Cheshire East. Now, Cheshire East was in another district which was failing because the numbers were dropping, and our bit was pushed across to District 1180 about 6 years ago. The items in yellow are the 7 traditional clubs that came across. You'll notice the numbers in yellow are pretty much the same now as they were when we started. So they've managed to climb quite well. But in between time, the average age has gone up about 3 years. So a few years ago, decided that we'd set some new clubs up. We've got 2 on the go and a 3rd one, which should be chartered round about end of June, perhaps early July. We don't know yet. But that will be a Zoom club. And if you add the 65 that will be in the new clubs, as of July, I'm estimating, you'd have 258. 258, and you had 198 in 2016. That's a 30% increase. The significance of that, I was talking earlier about RGBI talking about 31% decrease. Well, here is an increase. And I'm convinced we can do the same in other areas. There's nothing that special about Cheshire East. Nice place though. And the other thing to say about this, behind in the background, is that because we've introduced 2 clubs with lots of ladies in it, the number of women has more than doubled. And behind that, the average age has dropped about 5 years. So there's all these benefits. Now, moving on to, this is Wych, Malbank, Nantwich, to give it its full name. Tony Cotzel and I co-chaired the start of this club, but before that, it took Tony a little bit of while to convince his club, Nantwich, to actually start being a sponsor club. They're a bit nervous and this, that and the other, but in the end, I think it was about 2 to 1 they voted in favour. And you know, if you ever asked any of those Nantwich members now about the new club, it's such a vibrant club and they help the older clubs so much that not one of them would regret what they did. I'm sure of that. Now, they started off After 2 weeks, they had 8 members, and they had a satellite. After 12 weeks, they chartered with 24 members. And why was it so quick, you might ask? Well, it's partly because there's some ex-Rotarians knocking around. There's 2 from my club who'd left it 2 or 3 years before, and same with Tony. So we got those in, that helped. We also had an offspring, Pam Allen, from whose father was president of a club, and she says, I will never join my dad's club. I love my dad, but you know, it's a different generation, it's a different culture. And also BNI members, which stands for Business Networking International, that could be another business group in another area. It just happens to be BNI here. There's also a great venue. It's called Richmond Village. Now I'm talking to you about young people and vibrant clubs. Actually, it's a nursing home, and albeit a posh one. And currently they've got 27 members, 16 women, 11 men, which is certainly a bit different from most Rotary clubs. Now, just to move on, I will show you the other club, which is Northwich Weaver Valley, the one that's about to have a Zoom charter. Now, they started around about November time. This picture, I apologise for the picture, I took it, but I think at least it gives you an idea of smiley faces helps, doesn't it? And 2/3 of those people joined, and I think the other third have not given up the thought of joining. There are 21 members, 11 men and 10 women. All the paperwork's in now to RGBI. 2 ex-Rotarians, some BNI members, and 3 ex-Rotaract members. That's something we're really keen on, and we think, because the President-elect has got something to do with young citizens, etc., that in the future they might well form a Rotaract club. Now, just as an aside, when I see these pictures, I imagine many of you thinking just what I'm thinking. That was me and you 25, 30 years ago, wasn't it? What a thought. These are the questions. Are you concerned where your club will be in 5 years' time? I hope you are. Do you want to ensure that Rotary continues in your community? And the last third one, be honest with this one. Do you find it increasingly difficult to recruit younger working people? If the answer is yes, then look, help sponsor new clubs. It can be hard work, but it's a great satisfaction when you do it. And you will be supported by district membership. Now, some sample tips. I've talked about where these people have come from. I'll not repeat. What I find is that when you have a first meeting or 2, they set their own WhatsApp up. Next thing you know, there's 10 or 20 of them talking. It's brilliant. Find a suitable venue. Just have tea and coffee, nothing special, you know, just keep the cost down. Try initial meetings at breakfast time. Well, Tony and I have chosen to follow a model of Wyche, which is Breakfast Club, but it doesn't have to be. In fact, they all meet 3 times a month, both clubs, 3 times a month in the morning and once in the evening. Let the new members decide the future times and venue. Now, this is an interesting one. Let everyone stand up and introduce themselves. It can be nerve-wracking when you first do it, but usually the guests are put at the back so you can see what everybody else says. But really, it's great. And you end up telling people what you've been doing the last week and Rotary things as well. Great icebreaker. Now, a sponsor club champion is essential. And I'll introduce you to Tom later on. Suggested sources of new club creation. Well, obviously, I keep repeating myself, sponsor a new club. What I find sometimes when I talk to all the clubs, who I think should really be forming new clubs, they'll give me all sorts of reasons. They're very busy, they're this, that, and the other. Even somebody's upset them in district from, I don't know who, 5 years ago. But I'm not bothered about that. I just don't look back, look forward. Individual members, young or not so young, can create new clubs if your club doesn't want to sponsor it. Many of you got children, grandchildren, talk to them. Somebody said to me the other day, well, they don't live in our area. And I said, well, tell them at the Rotary clubs where they do live. Members frustrated with non-changing clubs. Oh, this, I'm sure there's a lot of this. Start with 2 Rotarians. I'll tell you a little story about Forth Bridge Rotary. I went to a district seminar, and I met these 2 people. I think she was about 40, he was about 37, I think. They look young to me. And they said that this is obviously up in Scotland. And one of the older traditional clubs actually recruited the young guy, and they immediately persuaded him to be president-elect, which I thought was actually quite good on their part. But then he wanted to do a health check and find out what changes could be made. And he got to a situation where, you know, he was talking to himself. He kept looking behind him and there's nobody there, you know, one of those situations. So he turned around and resigned from being president-elect, still a Rotarian. And he said, I want to form another club, people who think more like me and a bit younger, da-da-da-da-da. So he talked to this lady, who's a Rotarian in another club. They got together in a pub with 2 friends. Suddenly they have 4 Rotarians, well, 4 members. Then they use WhatsApp. 10 weeks later, there were 25 members and chartered. So it can be done. This is a plea from district membership. Experienced Rotarians, we call them advocates, willing to facilitate the start of new clubs after initially opening doors to clubs or individuals. We could do with 1 in each area. I've got 3 at the moment, so I need another 7. And we will provide training. Right. Summary, 31% drop. Cheshire East new clubs positive effect. District 11 needs to double its act, 3 to 4 new clubs a year. Advocates, your district needs you. And sponsor new clubs before it's too late, because I have actually come across people who do want to start a satellite, but they've left it till they're all in their 80s. And then suddenly, if somebody's going to support the person sponsoring it, the champion, they get ill or somebody died, and next thing I know, there's nobody with the energy to do it. This is what happens when you leave it too late. It just takes 2 members to start a new club process. Forth Bridge example. I love that story. What I call the 3 R's. We need to re-engage with the younger generations, refresh and re-energize Rotary. Any questions, please?
You'll mute myself. Yeah, we have got a few, Mike. I'll go through these quickly because we're running a little bit.
Shall I stop share or what? Shall I leave that on?
It's entirely up to you unless you finish.
I'll leave it. I'll leave it. Yeah.
Leave it, okay. There's been a couple here. Somebody wants to know the story of how Wyche Melbank meet in a care home. We can talk about that a little bit later on, which is a great story. Let me see. We've got. There are areas that are saturated with clubs where a new club isn't appropriate. In these situations, should we not support each other in gaining new members? That's from Beth Murray. Don't know what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah. Okay. Shall I just answer one at a time? I'll do the Wyche Melbank first.
Yeah, very. You'll have to be quick though because we are running behind time.
All right. Basically, we met in a coffee bar to start with. And after the first meeting, one of the members, who actually is a BNI member, she's the manager of the nursing home. She said, I've got fantastic facilities. I'll offer coffee and a few butties or whatever free. And you can't resist that, can you? I'll tell you now, there's Inner Wheel, there's the area meeting, everybody's meeting there because the facilities are so good. Saturated, Beth. Well, yes, in some areas, there's a lot of little clubs with 5 or 6 members. That's one, and they perhaps ought to think about joining together. In other areas, well, they're saturated, but what age group are they? How many 30 to 60-year-olds are there in the club? That is an obvious question.
Mike, if I could just interject another one. Surely it's easier to bolster membership of an existing club than to start a new club. Could we not just start friendship groups within an existing club, i.e. an under-60s group?
You could do, but one of the problems you have is that when I talk to people, they're saying you kind of becoming almost part of the main club. And they say to me that they, although they want help to be established, they want to run their own club. That's the main thing. And don't forget that that age group probably isn't well, the other clubs aren't well populated with that age group in that area, I imagine.
Yeah, okay. Another thing is Barry has pointed out Chester and Liverpool demographically are totally different to the most of us. Barry is from Flint and Holywell. I think that is obviously a thing. Some of our Welsh clubs are different. Our areas are different. Go on, Mike.
Well, there was a third one. If I was trying to get down to 20 minutes, but Rill, Gordon Marshall's the secretary there, isn't he? They've got 4 members, and they've got, I think, a 30-year-old, a 40-year-old, and a 50-year-old. So how long they can hold on to those, I don't know.
Okay.
So in other words, I'm saying that there are other areas, and I do recognise that perhaps urban areas are a different situation to country areas. Actually, David Brigden might, if we've got time, say something late on about Hardham, and they're out in the country there. And they were formed last June, and they've got 20 odd members.
I've got another couple coming in. All right. Mike, what did you mean by legacy in the community? That's from Jim Mole.
Yeah, what I meant by that was that we're all getting older. So if we're not having people coming up, other clubs, effectively to start taking over some of the things we're doing and doing their own things, then one day there won't be a Rotary because we're all too old in that area. So we need to leave a legacy for the local community. It's as simple as that.
Okay. Another question. Can you ask Mike why he is not promoting re-energising in all clubs? The newer clubs, i.e. formed a few years ago, need support to grow too, and education about what is available.
Right, well, that's a question of once you set up a club, you've got to make sure that your sponsor club put a lot of effort into showing them, explaining to them the systems and how things work. In other words, to get the good basic behind them. We don't want them to look like the old clubs, but on the other hand, they need some help, and also probably in things like leadership, because some of the people, the younger people, will aspire in the 30s and early 40s to be leaders of the future, and to help them with that. There's plenty of courses, of course, on Rotary that we could help them with, and I always encourage them to attend district meetings. Of course, that's a lot easier now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And just one final one. Somebody said that the other evening there was a slide put up saying that 80% of people leave after 18 months. What's the reason given? Normally, I mean, I'll answer this one if that's all right, Mike. Normally, the the reason for that is because people will put the reasons on DMSs or whatever it is as leaving, and it will be professional reasons, whatever it might be. Retiring, whatever it might be. It's not very specific, but what we should be doing, in my opinion, is we should be doing exit interviews. And if people leave our organisation, we should say, look, why are you leaving? Do you mind giving us some feedback? You can do it in a nice way. And ultimately, what we need to be able to say to these people is, look, if you're not happy, we don't want to lose you to the organisation. There is somewhere you can go. We are looking at, in this district, at this very moment, of combating that and giving people who want to leave Rotary because it's not suitable for them, they're too busy, they don't like paying the meals, they can't afford to pay the meals. We are in the throes of doing something about that right now. So it's important that we say to people, don't leave, just wait, hang fire, and we will get the district to help you out. And there will be more details about that coming out very, very soon.
Right, okay. Shall we move on to Sue now then?
I think we'll have to, yeah.
Yeah. Shall I stop the share?
Yeah, stop the share. Let's get Sue on board. Sue, you're muted. Hang on a second. Let me just unmute you. You need.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Sue.
I'm on. Good evening, everyone. I am going to show a video about Wych-Malbank, but before I do, I just thought I'd explain how I got involved with Rotary and then give you the context of how the group has been running. So I guess it's probably about 4 or 5 years ago now when I first joined Rotary, and I joined the Nantwich Rotary Club. And I was the one who brought the average age of the Rotary group down. And one of the things that I discussed with Tony Coxill at that time was that going along to the meeting was really okay, but it was seemed to be quite male. And for me, it was very much a luncheon club. And I'm a businesswoman. I've got 2 or 3 different organizations that I run, and one of them is a business network. And what we discussed was some of the reasons why visitors who were coming along to the group that I introduced from the networking weren't actually wanting to join. And some of that was about what was in it for them, and some of that was about not having time in the middle of the day. And the world has changed. Businesses do operate different hours and people do flexibly work, but possibly not everybody wants to take a large chunk out of the middle of the day because lunch is not something that necessarily people have these days. So we had a discussion about whether it was Rotary itself or whether it was effectively timing, whether it was effectively about the environment. So I'm afraid after about 1.5 years, I decided that whilst I had some enjoyment from going to Rotary and I was not unhappy about being part of it, I didn't really feel that there was anything that I could offer. And I certainly didn't think that there was a great deal that I could do to help Rotary move forward. And I had other business pulls. So I left Rotary at that point. And I'm very glad that I was invited back to Wych-Malbank as they were going to be formed. But I was the one who brought the average age of Wych-Malbank up. And what was different about that group with all of them were business owners, and the majority were women. And it may be that for a long time, people believe that the way that men and women work together is equal. But actually, if you're in a room full of guys, then that can be intimidating if there's only 1 or 2 women, as there were in the Nantwich group. However, when you're in a room of other women who are also running their own businesses and guys are running their own businesses, there's more camaraderie. And it was definitely a situation where we all felt we were on a level playing field. To carry on from Mike's point about wanting to run the group, I think there were a few, perhaps you might call them old-fashioned ideas, which we just felt we didn't want to continue with. And maybe the way in which Rotary was kind of trying to steer the group wasn't necessarily what we wanted to embrace everything. We wanted to embrace one of the major planks, which was to help the community and to be part of the community fundraising experience. So I'm going to show you now the video. I'm hopefully going to be able to share the screen, and I'm going to show you the video which we've put together, which I hope demonstrates what Wych-Malbank is all about. So hope you get a flavour of what White Mailbag has been doing. We're all about raising money for charity, all of the events, the kinds of events that you would be running in your clubs. We raised £3,000 to give to charities in the first year and 6,000 in the second year. And obviously we've been hit like everyone else has with the COVID, so those figures are up to the end of February. We've done from quizzes to suppers to concerts to liaison with schools to gin and wine tasting to steward events and buddy bag packs. So any questions, I'm happy to take them, but it's about whatever you want to know, really. So that's, I thought, would help you to get a flavour of what the club's all about.
Thanks very much, Sue. Mike, I think we should move on to the next segment.
Yeah. Tony Coxill, you can say a few words.
Got to try and find you, Tony. Where are you?
Where is he?
James, if you can find him. Hold on.
Cannot find him.
I'm trying.
Search for Tony. He's not there. Did he disconnect?
Okay, well, shall we come back to Tony then? And David Buxton. David, would you like to talk on behalf of Northwich Weaver Valley? Knees on mute.
That's good. Just a bit of housekeeping there. Tony messaged me to say he's just had a power cut, and that's where he disappeared to. So hopefully he will be able to resume at some point in the next few minutes. So I think my experience really echoes that of Sue and White Mailbag, because I'm a chartered accountant. I run my own business. I've been involved in various fundraising and charity activities over the last few years, things like doing the Free Peaks, the Welsh 3000s, raising money for local schools, and Age UK. And what I was really looking for was some way that I could really connect with the local community and really engage in worthwhile projects, also with an eye on the international, but also something that fitted in with running a business as well. And my real sort of introduction to Rotary then was Tony Coxill and Tom Dickerson coming and attending the BNI meeting I go to on a Tuesday morning. And I and a few other people were invited along to the first sort of meeting of what would become Northwich Weaver Valley before Christmas. And really Tom and Tony and yourself, Mike, and John Walton really have guided us and sort of not tried to control us, but really just gave us a little nudge now and again. And we have grown through our own sort of business networks and business contacts, but also through friendship groups and through social media as well, using things like LinkedIn and Facebook. And we were probably on about 17 people to be members before lockdown came, but the last 3 or 4 people have all joined us during lockdown through the social events we've put on every week, be they quizzes, wine tasting, coffee and cake, and we've held those separate from our weekly meetings on a Wednesday morning. We found that a lot of our members run their own business, and if you guys came along to BNI to talk to us, we're used to getting up early and doing something like BNI where you've got to be there at 6:45. So having the Rotary meetings in the morning, 7:30 till 8:30, with quite a tight agenda, quite focused, really appealed to us. Myself, I'm a FA qualified coach, and I coach under 12s in the evenings. So that really uses up some of my other free time. So to commit to Rotary, I really needed something that was going to be in the mornings. And also, I think there's a way that as a new club, hopefully we can balance and complement the other clubs in Northwich, because we've got a lunchtime club and an evening club, and what we offer is something different. We offer a morning club. So, you know, and my hope is that all 3 clubs in Northwich will really work together as well. I mean, our ages go from between 30 to 70, and our average age is pretty much bang on 50, I think. And I'm 47, so I'm pretty much sort of in that average for us. We're at 21 at the moment, but our aim is to really get to hopefully 30, and from that, you know, really almost become self-sustaining, where the membership can really sort of keep new people coming. But also, we're really keen, as you've mentioned, Mike, we do have 3 ex-Rotaract members, and what our VP-elect, he works for the National Citizenship Service. So we're hoping that with those links, we can really try and get Rotaracts involved and almost get a conveyor belt of new members there that will hopefully graduate into being members of the club in time as well. So I think I'd probably sort of summarise to say that we're looking at using our contacts, but we're also looking at putting systems in place where it makes it easier for people to join Rotary. We don't want any hurdles in the way. We don't want any misunderstandings or people not really getting what we're about. We want to make it a nice, seamless process for them to join Rotary.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Are there any questions for David? Steve?
I'm unmuted now. Yeah, there's actually been a bit of conflab going on between people. I would encourage everybody to have a little look at the chat facility. There's all sorts of stuff going on there. I can't comment on everything because there's far too much. There's a conflab about age going on. It doesn't matter about age. Julia Sale has pointed out work in the community isn't about raising funds, but it's also about using the skills within the club. And the fact, somebody also mentioned that, you know, we do projects which actually the club can complete because of their age, possibly. Some people saying that we should have younger people. Some people saying, well, actually, we don't really need younger people because we can still do stuff. You know, maybe there should be another club for younger people, which is great. Everyone having lots of different ideas. Just bear with me a second. Project clubs are the way forward. That's from DG Hartley. Are there other types of clubs on the way? It's a private message. Yes, there are other types of clubs on the way, and more suitable clubs for those sorts of people who haven't got the time. Somebody mentioned a little while back, are e-clubs the way forward? Yes, watch this space. That's all I'm willing to say on that matter. Watch this space. We've all learned from this pandemic. Rotary has changed the last few months, and it's going to change more. Back to you, Mike. Okay.
Tom Dickerson, can you just say a few words about what it's like being a sponsor champion, if you like? Where is Tom Dickerson? Oh, there, I can see him there, yeah.
Yep.
Right, Tom, yeah.
Yes, just waiting to be unmuted there. Yes, thank you, Mike. Yes, I'll tell you a little story about myself so that I can take you into this. That the dental practice that I ran was based in Newcastle-under-Lyme. I was invited to join the local Rotary Club there. They met at lunchtime, and for 23 years, I felt like a part-time Rotarian. Other than a Tuesday lunchtime, when I was not engaged at the club, I was 35 miles away at my home. So very much a part-time Rotarian. But I retired 5 years ago and looked to transfer to a local Rotary Club where I could make a difference. I believe the one that needed me most was at Knutsford, and I was right, because within 6 months, I was the vice president. I spent 3.5 years there attempting to modernise the club with some success. However, there was great resistance from very established members who just wanted to have a meal with friends while expecting to be entertained each week. I transferred to Northwich in July last year. Their average age was the same age as Knutsford at 74. So as a youngster of 68, I was assigned to the membership committee, and 3 months in, I was approached about establishing a satellite club. 2 clubs already existed in Northwich at the time, one meeting at lunchtime and one meeting in the evening. So it was decided to establish the Breakfast Club. And I researched the local area for suitable venues. I received assistance from Tony Coxell in deciding which venue was most appropriate, and I also received help with literature that was produced for the Nantwich Malbank Club in getting leaflets printed. Material was placed in the Northwich Guardian and the local Hertford News, publicising the first meeting. Tony, again, as mentioned, also organised a visit to the local BNI group, and they already had their meetings as a breakfast meeting. So the first meeting was held at the Coachman in Hertford at 7:30 a.m. on Wednesday, the 6th of November, 2019. There was a turnout in double figures, and Mike Constable and Tony presented what Rotary was all about. The Northwich Rotary Club paid for the printing of the leaflets and the cost of those first two meetings. But much was learnt from establishing the club. Numbers grew very quickly, and senior club officers were appointed. But unfortunately, Christmas Day and New Year's Day both fell on Wednesday. So there was a 3-week break, and momentum was lost, and numbers did drop. But that momentum has taken some time to return. Certainly, at club and district level, there is an awareness that forming new clubs is the way forward. Relying on recruitment to existing clubs is not working. I mean, the Northwich Club, 10 months on, I'm still the latest recruit. So yet, going back to the new club, they already have 20 members. So the average age of the new club too, it's 24 years younger than the Northwich Club. Questions are raised from establishing this new club. I mean, one, I know that I've mentioned to Mike here before, and no district are aware of it, is that it seems unfair that with so many existing clubs having less than 20 members, a new club has got to have at least 20 members. But I know these questions are now being asked higher up the hierarchy, and hopefully once they're considered and hopefully dealt with, it'll make establishing new clubs easier in the future. But has it been worth it? Well, for me, it certainly has. The Northwich Weaver Valley Rotary Club is leading the way and helping the local community, especially during the present crisis. Locally, they lead the way with holding Zoom meetings every week, along with a social meeting on a Friday evening. They are a very dynamic Rotary Club, even if they're not yet recognised as such. Mike invited me to become a local advocate, and certainly I will advise and mentor the next club in this area that wants to sponsor a club to help them along the way too. But it's been mentioned before, looking into the future, the new club are ideally placed to establish a Rotaract club and possibly even a Interact club within the Northwich area. So that should ensure Rotary and Northwich will continue well beyond the 97 years to date. Thank you. Any questions there?
Thanks, Tom. Any questions, Steve?
Just unmute myself. There's been a few comments. There's some really, as I say, there's some great communication between people. I'm not going to go through all that because they're actually talking between each other, which is brilliant. There's somebody saying it doesn't have to be strenuous work that we're talking about. A lot of people are talking about it's service. It's not about raising money. Projects are the way forward. There's one here that I want to read out. Somebody saying, I'm young, but I'm not as capable as some 70-year-olds. We need to think about people who, may have some form of disability as well. There was one from somebody talking about another Rotaract club. It's nice. Fiona from Williston and South Wirral, an ex-Rotaractor, talking about Rotaract. We need to get you on board, Fiona. And there was another one here. I've got to go down to my new messages. Who have we got next, Mike?
Right, is Tony Vike? Have we got Tony Vike?
I don't think he is.
Right, well, if he's still here, David Brigden was going to say a few words about Arden, if he's still here. He had to go a bit early, though, I think.
Yeah, can you check, James? I don't think he is.
Has he gone? Well, that's a great pity.
I've unmuted David Brigden. Tony isn't here.
And yeah, I just got a message saying...
Oh, he's on the phone. Never mind. Oh, yeah, I've muted him again.
Right, okay.
Right, okay then. Right. Well, Tony, we've missed Tony, but I'll just mention something I know that Tony would have said, and that was that he used to belong to this organisation, Business Networking International. He started off with one chapter. They call it a chapter, where they meet in the morning for breakfast and all this, and it's all about gaining business. And time he finished, about 4 or 5 years later, he had 18 chapters all over North Wales and Cheshire, whatever. And because there were 1 or 2 BNI members joined Wyche, and they joined Wyche not for business, they went for the opposite thing, which was friendship and helping the community. That was their reason for doing it. He and I went to meet his old colleagues who run the UK BNI, and we come back with an agreement. It's just an alliance where they could come and chat to Rotary clubs if they want them along, and we'll go and chat to them. We only get a few minutes when we get there, so we make the most of it. And the idea was that we'd start in with Wyche, then we go to Northwich, and perhaps Chester or somewhere like that next. Doesn't have to be. But it's certainly one of the models that we'd use. And I wouldn't say that's the only model. I mean, you heard about the School of Tropical Medicine that Liverpool Exchange are doing. That's a different model. It could be pure e-clubs and all this sort of thing. The other thing that Tony would probably mention was that I actually thought that Tony mentioned to me that they'd raised £13,000 in the 19 months they've existed, something like that. But anyway, I remember him saying that, but yeah, and that's it. So, actually, if Tony's not here, any further questions anybody would like to ask? If not, I'll do a closing comment.
Got Jeff who'd like to say something. Jeff, are you there?
Jeff.
Hi. Am I on?
Hi, Jeff.
Fine. We're talking about re-energising clubs. I don't think we should be thinking about writing off our older clubs. We should be helping them to stay in business a bit more. And I think the biggest problem is if you're going to bring a 30-year-old into a group of 70-year-olds, neither side is going to meld. What we ought to be doing is looking for members 5 years below your average age at the moment. Once you get 1 or 2 of those in, go for 5 years below them. You can build a club without building an age gap in that way. And eventually you'll get a younger club.
Well, can I just mention, Jeff, just to pick up your point, I'm talking about new clubs and existing clubs.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that the older club could sponsor the start of a new club. Okay.
Okay.
And they will help to get them off the ground, like Northwich have done, like Nantwich did. Yeah. And that's the idea. And I agree with you. It's a bit like oil and water, putting a 30-year-old in with 75-year-olds. It just doesn't work, does it? It just doesn't work.
I'm picking up on your energized point. That's the way to do it with an older club.
Yeah.
You re-energize topic. Build downwards from what you already have, not putting underneath and try and build it up. Try and work downwards. That way you can keep the club moving as it is, but you can exist it.
Jeff, can I just come back on that? Can I just come back on that? If you remember in my presentation, I talked about good practice of recruitment, like Chester have done and Wallasey have done. So I'm trying to say to people, help us manage decline by bringing some new blood in. They might be in their 60s, but let's face it, they're 10 or 15 years younger. And that's the point I was making. So there's 2 audiences. One is the old clubs to try and refresh them a bit, and the other one is to make up for the gap of 30 to 60-year-olds that aren't there.
Mike, can I just say something?
Go on.
Just to say, I'm 63, so I wasn't a 30-year-old joining a Rotary club. And that doesn't mean necessarily that the groups that are wanting to commit to helping the community in whatever way they do necessarily are massively younger than the Rotary groups that existed. And I have absolute respect and support for the the Rotary groups that exist with older members. My father was a founding member of Rotary. He's 93. He still goes. If it was operating now, the one thing he says about lockdown is he misses his Rotary lunch. And personally speaking, I never got invited until I was 60. All right. So I just want people to understand that there is a difference, even a few years younger than perhaps the youngest member. The outlook about business and development may be different. That's all I wanted to add.
I would just mention, Sue, that in White, the oldest member, John, is 73, and he is so energetic, it's unbelievable.
74.
Can I just say this? Can I just say a couple of things? Somebody said, Barry said, don't agree. I joined Rotary when I was 25. It was my 80th birthday 2 months ago. I've never felt out of friendship, which is good. People will have different views on that. I know of some people younger people who've joined a Rotary club with older people, and they've enjoyed it because they've been made to feel welcome. They've been given responsibility. And those older people, those older Rotarians, I've taught that younger person something, but also those older Rotarians have learned from the younger person. That's where you get the good mix, and that's where I think that's something I think we should remember.
I just mentioned there that in Area 10, we very much encourage collaboration. There's been a hell of a lot of collaboration, and I know Simon's intending to hold regular area meetings. You know, the older clubs and newer clubs working together. And this really helps. It helps both sides. Experience, energy, you know, good mixture.
It does, and Liz Byrne has made a really good comment. We need to have lots of different ways forward for different situations, and that's absolutely correct, Liz. Somebody once described Rotary as being a bit like a buffet. Okay, you need to be able to come into the organisation and say, well, I like that, and I like that, and I like that. I don't like that. That's not me. And then from there, they can make their choice about where they want to go in Rotary. You know, for some people, it is simply not possible to have a meal every week. People can't afford it. Anybody can join Rotary. It's not for business people, it's for people in our communities as well. Rotary is open to everybody, and it's important, I feel, that we give them something that they can choose from, and that is why we're hoping very soon that we'll be able to offer something that is low cost and less commitment, but for people who actually want to give service in the form of an e-club. We've all been meeting online recently. It's been very, very successful. And people are starting to realise, actually, you know, to be a Rotarian, you don't have to have a meal every week. If you want to, that's absolutely fine. But actually, people want to join Rotary and they don't want to have a meal every week, but they want to do service in their community, like the 750,000 people that are working for the NHS. I think we need to be looking at these people and we need to provide them with a vehicle for them to join Rotary. And like I say, watch this space in the form of a passport club or an e-club. It's going to be happening very soon.
Yeah. Well, the whole point is there's a whole lot of change. Actually, you sounded like you've read my my closing speech.
I have, Mike.
750,000, yeah. But the point is, the 750,000 aren't going to be queuing at your door. You've got to go out and get them. You've got to sell yourself in the best way possible. I know they're doing some work on our GBI on connecting with these people, these new volunteers they talk about. But we mustn't wait for tablets of stone. We must get on with things ourselves.
Mike, can I just
go on?
Jane Wetnall. James, can you unmute her? Because
go on.
Jane just wants to ask me a question. I'm putting myself in the firing line here, aren't I? Can she unmute herself, James? Or
yeah,
assuming okay there.
Jane, are you there?
Thank you, Steve.
Hi, Jane.
Just quite an observation, because I'm taking all this. I have been a Rotarian for quite a long time. Even though I'm not older, and I was originally the only woman in the group, and now there's two, of what you're talking about, an older type of group. But so I'm listening, I've been on to all your different things you've done and the diversity. And I'm glad you said as a last statement that this is not just for business people. I mean, I run a big organisation and have lots of staff, 50 odd volunteers. But even listening to tonight's conversation, everybody was talking about they run a business. So like you're saying, our membership is smaller, and the average age is probably 70 to 80, even though I'm not in that age group. Yeah. But listening even to your presentation tonight, and I'm a business person myself, I would be thinking the only person that could join your organisation is somebody that runs their own business. Until you said just a minute ago that actually this Rotary is for any single person.
It is.
That's just, but that didn't come over.
Well, I can take your point.
You go to a business thing, BMI, they've got businesses. Now I run one, so I'm one of yourselves. Yeah. But maybe that's one of our problems of membership, that people think they can't join us unless they run their own business.
No, that's not the case.
No, it isn't. But
Jane, let me tell you, the only reason that 2 of the 3 clubs I've been involved in are business clubs like this is because we had a model. We worked on a model, but I'm not excluding anything else. I did mention Liverpool Exchange, didn't I?
Yes.
They're probably all lecturers. Yeah. They're not business people, you know. Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not saying because the crew club, the businessmen, but because you were talking about new membership, it wasn't till you said, Steve, just a few minutes before the end, that actually Rotary is for every member. Because I would be thinking, I need to run a business to be a member. That's just an observation.
Yeah, that's fine. That's absolutely fine, and I'm sure Mike, you'll take that on board. David Hartley, District Governor-elect, would like to say something. Thank you very much for that, Jane.
David.
Right. Well, I had quite a lot to say, but I think Steve's taken the words out of my mouth.
Sorry. Me as well.
Yeah, you too, Mike. Yeah. Picking up on, was it Jane that's just spoken?
Yeah.
Yeah. I go back to the fact that one of my fellow DGs in Scotland started up a club 3 years ago. They meet in a community centre, when they're allowed to, of course, because of the current situation. But when they are allowed to meet, they put money in a pot when they go in. And they have never, ever been short of subs to pay. Within that group of 30 Rotarians, there are homeless people. Everybody, and I mean everybody, is welcome into Rotary, to my mind, and that is how it should be. We're all equals. Nobody's any better than anybody else. And I will say, when I first joined Rotary over 20 years ago, and I'm still only 37, believe it or not, that's up here I am. But when I joined Rotary over 20 years ago in Southport Club, I felt intimidated by some. Not all, but I were in the whole, I was made welcome. And that is how it should be. And people should be made to feel welcome, and they should be made to feel important and a valued part of that club. And the only way of doing that really is to make them a member of a committee. If you have committees, listen to their ideas. Don't say, "Oh, we've done that before and it didn't work." Well, try it again and in a different way. But whatever you do, make people feel welcome into Rotary, and they will stay. I've stayed for over 20 years now. I'd never any intentions of doing this role, believe me. My wife tried all sorts to talk me out of it, but here I am, and I hope to make a difference in the next 12 months. And everybody everybody can make a difference in the next 12 months if they put their mind to it. I firmly believe in clubs should get out in the community, get themselves known. That in itself will bring members in. Mike's talked about Rotary in Great Britain and Ireland. They've got Together Talks. My concern is with Together Talks, it's not reaching the people that we're wanting to reach. And I've said this to Nikki Scott, who's the RI incoming director. We need to get out to these people. We need to get out to these volunteers that Steve's just talked about with the NHS volunteers. The Rotarians, they just don't know it yet. The Rotarians in waiting, and that is what we have to target. And if we can bring those people in, and I accept what Jeff says about, you know, bringing a 30-year-old in with a 70-year-old. If they're made welcome, it doesn't matter what age they are. And if they're made to feel important, give them a role within the club. Make them president, if need be, but make them feel welcome. Thank you.
Right. Just to conclude, half of what I was going to say has been said, but just to take the general comment that I think the problem, what I'm trying to do is encourage people in different areas to create new clubs. Now, I recognise different areas are not like my area, Northwich, Dantwich, whatever. I recognise that. But all I'm saying to people, it's the way ahead, whether it's young mothers meeting for coffee, because there is one in, I think it's Maidenhead like that, the one that David mentioned. There's different types. It just so happens that we have a model that we worked on. But we aren't going to stick to that and ignore anything else. That's certainly not.
Mike, sorry.
Yeah, I'd like to finally just to encourage follow-up contact. Anybody wants to talk to me as individuals or as clubs, please do that. I was speaking on Zoom to Abigail about 2 or 3 weeks ago because I contacted them about something else, but they asked me to go and talk to them. I'm willing to do that. It's so easy now with Zoom and other individuals, perhaps with, as I say, with Zoom meetings. We've got practical knowledge of creating clubs, and you know, it's exciting this because there will be new clubs that will be different, and that's what keeps you going, is because they're always different. Creating new clubs, and we've got practical knowledge, and Tony Cotsall, unfortunately, he had the blackout, not physically, but he's electric. He and I are practical hands-on, we're not theorists. Okay, and that's why you can rely on us to help support you. We'll not do it all for you, but we'll show you how, and we'll encourage you.
Mike, I just